Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Welcome back. Intermediate and Advanced Chess Workshop. It feels like it's been ages since we've done this. It has been ages since it's the first one, like of the second semester. Hello. Hello. Welcome. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Naranjan. I'm the Wellbeing Officer for Chess Society, and I'm also the person that does the beginner lessons and the intermediate workshops. And basically today we're gonna talk about the Semi-Slav Defence and like go through what it is and trying to like implement it in a game and looking at some master level games as well. But I just want to like introduce these sessions in general. So these are intermediate and advanced workshops. Basically, like we go through a bunch of different intermediate concepts in chess. I do these sessions every 2 weeks, and then Fraser over here, he does them every other 2 weeks as well, where he like basically goes over like some of our team games pretty much. So we play in this thing called the LRCA, the Leicestershire and Rutland Chess Association, and we play like a league, and we play against like all the different clubs in Leicestershire, and he's going to analyze the games that we play in that league pretty much. So without further ado, we'll get started with the Semi-Slav Defence. So I've got some learning objectives for you guys. I'm not going to read them out. You can, I guess, read them. But basically, we're just going to go through the Semi-Slav, the basics of it pretty much, and then we're gonna look at master level games. So we're going to look at a game between Levon Aronian and Viswanathan Anand, and it was a really nice game. I think it was probably one of Vishy's best games. 2013, yes. And we're going to look at some, and hopefully like at the end of the session, we're going to get you guys to play against each other. I just want to point out that we have a tournament coming up. It's called Buka Chess, and essentially it's basically like a huge inter-university tournament that takes place every year. All the details are not like completely finalized yet, but I just wanted like you guys to know that this is probably coming up, and that these sessions that we're running, they're kind of like training sessions for the upcoming tournament, pretty much. And obviously, all the links, the details for it is in the QR code there. If you want to scan it, if you want to take a picture of that, you're more than welcome to. But we can do that afterwards, I suppose. So, as I've said before, I've split this session into 3 parts. First half is theory, or first third is theory. What actually is a semi-Slav, right? The semi-Slav, pretty much, it's a response to the Queen's Gambit. So the Queen's Gambit is d4, d5, c4, right? And usually black can play a bunch of different things. They can play Queen's Gambit declined, so they play d4, d5, c4, and we play e6, which has been played like millions of different times. White can play the exchange, so they can play d6, c4, which has also been completely fine, like been played for many years now. But today we're talking about the Semi-Slav. So the Semi-Slav comes from the Slav defense, which comes from after d4, d5, c4. We play this move c6. And basically we're defending the center with a flank pawn instead of how the Queen's Gambit decline does it with the e pawn. So the Semi-Slav is like a very highly theoretical kind of opening, pretty much. There's been people that have been studying it for years and still have no idea how it works. So, you know, I'm only going to go through like the basics of it, because obviously we have like an hour to do it. I don't have 3 years to tell you guys about it, pretty much. You get what I mean. And like I said before, so the Slav opening starts from this move, c6. But to actually enter the Semi-Slav, white has to develop both their knights to the center, and we develop our knight to f6, and we play this move e6 as well. So sort of like creating a triangle formation, pretty much. Kind of like a London, but it's not as easy as a London. You know, London is so easy. Yeah, exactly, and the bishop's outsides. So there is alternatives. So that's what I was going to talk about. So there's this thing called the three knights defense, where they get the bishop outside of the triangle, and they play e6 after that. This is completely different to the Semi-Slav, because in the Semi-Slav, this bishop goes on this diagonal, this long diagonal here. So the plans of the Slav defense with the three knights is completely different. And also, if you got the note boon variation, so instead of playing knight f6, you actually take the pawn in the center, kind of making it like a queen's gambit accepted. But again, like I said, it's completely different because you have this pawn on c6 blocking your knight. And also you got the stone wall defense, which I really like. I haven't looked into it properly, but I've been meaning to do it because if you played against me, you know I love my f4 and my f5 moves. I love opening up the f-file, and basically the stone wall defense kind of, it doesn't really do that. It doesn't, like, you don't open the f-file, but you use the f-file to create a really nice defense, a really nice offense for all your pieces, pretty much. And it's sort of like a really passive kind of thing, a kind of passive opening where you try and let your opponent make a mistake from your really strong center, pretty much. So basically, as I mentioned before, there's like a bunch of different lines that you can do in the Semi-Slav because it's highly theoretical. You have so many different ways you can respond to it. But for today's session, we're going to talk about this move, e3. White can play a bunch of different stuff. They can, instead of playing e3, they can play bishop g5. They can play bishop f4 as well. They can bring the bishop out here. They can play queen c3 as well. They can play anything. But for today's session, we're going to be focusing on e3 because this is the main line. And like I said before, like they can do so many different things. They can even take the pawn in the center, which again makes it into a completely different position. So once we've done this setup with e3, we basically develop our knight to the center, and if got something stuck in my throat there. If white plays this move d3, if white plays this move bishop d3, this is actually a really critical line because what we do is we capture this pawn. And the reason why we capture this pawn now instead of something like here is because if we capture it now, white captures back with the bishop. Whereas now they've already moved their bishop once, so if we capture it again, they move it twice and attacking it again. So they basically lose the tempo, pretty much. They move their bishop twice in the opening. It's still playable for white, but it's not recommended, I suppose. But it is the main line, so people still play it anyway because it's completely fine for both sides, even though white loses tempo twice. I think someone's at the door, but I'm not sure. It's fine. So I've got a little... So like I said before, like once the bishop moves here, we play this move b5, kicking the bishop out, and this is what we call the Meran variation of the Semi-Slav. This is one of the most popular ways of playing the Semi-Slav, but obviously, like I said before, there's many other ways to play it, and I don't have the time to tell you all about them. So we're just going to focus on the Meran variation, pretty much. I've got a little reflection for you. So I mentioned that in this position, white plays the move bishop d3, and some people, when they're playing as white, they don't want to enter the Meran because of this move, d takes c4. So I've got a question to you guys. What alternative move can white play to make sure that they don't enter the Meran variation? What else can they do? Maybe b3? Maybe b3. The thing is, I'll explain later on why b3 doesn't really work, because there's plans of playing a3 and b4 later on for white, but b3 is kind of a slow move. So there's I think there's better ways of playing this other than b3. Yeah, so queen c2 is the main idea. So getting off this... So instead of getting the bishop here, we control this diagonal with the queen instead of the bishop, right? The whole idea of moving your bishop here was to control this diagonal. So instead of going here, we play queen c2 and controlling that diagonal as well. Later on in the Semi-Slav, white is always going to play queen c2 anyway. So instead of entering the Meran and playing queen c2 later on, they play it right now.
There is also another thing where white can put the knight on d2 and then play d3 to keep the b2 edge diagonal open for the bishop.
So playing knight d2, so this one?
Yeah, and then b3 and then bishop d2. So that
Yeah.
you're going to lose that.
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
it's a slow approach.
Yeah, I haven't seen that before, but I'll take your word for it because that makes sense. Like having this bishop on this diagonal as well, having this bishop opening up would be pretty good as well. Like I don't see why that would be a bad move, pretty much. But yeah, the main answer that I was looking for was this move, queen c3. There's other alternatives like a3, which is really slow, but people still play it as well. But whatever floats your boat, pretty much. Whatever you want to play, you can play it. The 64 squares on the board, you can play whatever you want. And I mentioned before that the light squared bishop is probably the most important piece when you're playing the Semi-Slav. And the reason why it's the most important is because you want to get it to this diagonal over here, this long white diagonal. And the whole point of the Semi-Slav is to kind of rip open the center and get this light square bishop to see the entire board, pretty much. Bishops are snipers, pretty much. The longer scope that they have, the more that they can see, the better they are, the happier they are, pretty much. And I'm going to tell you later on that basically the entire plan of the Semi-Slav is to open up that bishop and to get it onto a more like having a better scope, pretty much. And so how we do this is that once the white retreats their bishop either to d3 or e2 or to b3, whatever they do. I have another slide about that afterwards. Whatever they do, we play the move bishop b7. This is probably the most important move that you got to remember. If you don't remember anything else from this session, just remember bishop b7, right? This is the most important move. And later on, black wants to try and expand these pawns over here. So they want to play a move of a6. They want to get their rook to this square over here, and they want to play the move. They want to play the move c5, pretty much. The reason why is, like I mentioned before, this pawn is in the way right now. So getting the move c5 in opens up the bishop and opens up the scope for it, pretty much. And I mentioned to you before that white wants to play the moves a3 and b4, and the reason why they want to do this is to prevent any moves of c5, pretty much, because there's two pawns over here. Anytime you move this c pawn, you just capture it, right? It's completely free. This plan of a3 b4, it tries to stop the light squared bishop. So now you know, pretty much. Now you know if black does this, you can try playing a3 b4 later on if you're playing as white. Does anyone have any questions so far? Any questions? No? And there's this really strange line, I suppose. No, not really strange, but kind of interesting, I suppose. So I mentioned before that when we play this move, when we try and kick out this bishop, there's a bunch of different places it can go to. So it can go back to d3, it can go back to e2, or you can play the move b3. which is, all of these are completely fine, but the only thing about bishop a3, bishop a3? No. Bishop b3, that's a typo. The only thing about this is that we can play this move b4, which attacks the knight, and if the knight moves to the towards the edge of the board, we play this move bishop a6, which prevents white from castling, right? So instead of moving the knight to the edge, you play the move knight e2, so getting it back to the king side. So the whole ideas of the Semi-Slav kind of originate from whatever white does, pretty much. So whatever white does with this bishop, with this light square bishop, we play a bit differently, and we make sure that we take advantage of whatever mistakes white makes, pretty much. And I mentioned before that the bishop on b7 is really important in the Semi-Slav. The reason why is because if we don't actually develop this bishop to b7 and we carry on with the ideas of a6 and c5 without the bishop going here, like this example over here, then we run into white playing the moves e4 and e5 and basically storming the entire center with their pawns. And this is really bad for black, because where does this knight move to, right? When white plays e4, e5, you can't really move the knight into a good square. You don't really want to move it to the edge because knights on the rim are dim, and moving it back is just really depressing, so we shouldn't be able to do that. And there's a line afterwards where you move the knight to the center, but I'll show you that on the next slide. The main line from here, this is all still theory, by the way, this is all completely playable, even though I've mentioned that it does seem pretty bad, it's still completely fine, is that black plays c takes d4, pretty much. And the idea of it is that the queen takes back, and it's still a 1.3 advantage for white, even though for us, I think a 1.3 advantage is like, it's still completely playable, but for like a grandmaster or something, it's basically, it's not great. I've kind of contradicted myself, I've just realized that, but try not to let e4 and e5 happen, pretty much. And I mentioned before that you can try and mobilize the knight into the center over here, but then this isn't great because white can just recapture this knight with their knight, and then when we recapture with a pawn, that pawn in the centers, so that pawn on d5, isn't great. The reason why is because, remember, we want to get this bishop, our light square bishop, on this diagonal, but having a pawn there means that it's blockaded, right? We can't progress our attack without our bishop, pretty much. And I'll show you a game later on in the session where the inactivated light square bishop, the effects of that is shown, pretty much. So basically, the moral of that story was try not to let e4 and e5 happen. There's some lines where you can play e5 yourself to prevent e4, e5 from happening, but I think that's for your own self-study, pretty much. Because obviously I don't have the time to teach you guys that. Again, like I mentioned, the bishop e7 is really important. So this is another line, so kind of similar to the one that I showed you before, except that instead of playing e4, e5 immediately, white wastes a move, kind of. I wouldn't say wait, kind of, it's not really a waste, but it's a loss of a tempo, kind of, where they castle, and that lets us play bishop b7. Now, if they play e4, e5 in the center, we're okay with making this trade of knights, because instead of taking with this pawn, so instead of the knight moving here, captures, we take with the bishop, right? We don't take with the pawn anyway. We take with this bishop, and that long diagonal is still open. And we use this to our advantage, and we make sure that we use it to our attack, pretty much. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah? Is it okay so far? Yeah? And basically, the future plans of the Semi-Slav is that you try and go for a huge kingside attack, right? You use your bishops. So, in a lot of cases, you bring the dark square bishop to d6, and you mobilize these two bishops to sort of stare at the enemy king, pretty much. And so in some lines, you can play something like queen c7 as well, to basically just reinforce this attack on the diagonal, pretty much. Whereas white, they want to stop us from playing this move c5, and I've mentioned to you before they can play something like a3 and b4 to stop that. So as I mentioned, like try and implement that into your games as well to stop this bishop from activating. And white kind of also does a similar idea. They also want to use their own diagonal to their advantage. So in some games you have something like knight g5, trying to put more pressure on this pawn as well. And they use their own light square bishop in some lines where they put a lot of pressure on this pawn. I think I played a game against you, Fraser. Was it in the just before the game?
Yes.
Just before the game, where we were practicing the Semi-Slav, and we got to a position kind of similar to this, where he was playing as white, I was playing as black, and he had this same this battery on this diagonal, this light square diagonal, and I remember I think I played a move like g6. I played g6, yeah. I played g6, trying to stop this battery from entering here. And Fraser played the move h4 and was thinking of playing h5 as well. Because this is a hook, so it's a pawn pushed in front of the king, so it acts as a hook, and playing moves like h4, h5, try and rip open the king sides. Whereas I still need to play a6, and I play my rook move, but I just need to play c5 and mobilize my pieces this way. And that's basically the Semi-Slav, right? This is called the Meran variation of the Semi-Slav. Obviously, there's a lot more that you can look at, but that's basically all the time that I have to tell you about the Meran variation, pretty much. I want to talk about what not to do. I think Semi-Slav. I have this really, really quick game that happened that's really interesting. It's between these two players. It's called Josip Rukavina versus Jens Hartung Nielsen. Apologies if I butchered the pronunciation, but I don't speak whatever language they speak probably. But pretty much this is a masterclass of what not to do in the Semi-Slav. I mentioned before, millions of different times, that the bishop b7 move is really important, and advancing this pawn over here to get this long diagonal is really important as well. But let's see what happens if that doesn't happen, right? Let me take a sip of water because my throat is so dry for some reason. I'm so sorry. I haven't done these sessions in such a long time. I'm so rusty at these. I'm sorry about that. So the game starts with the moves c4 and c6. So this is the English opening, but it transposes into a Semi-Slav over here. So if you remember that the Semi-Slav actually starts when you have d4 on the board as well. So Semi-Slav starts here, and they play this move knight d7, which is still theory, and they play the Meran version, pretty much. They play this bishop move. Remember we talked before about playing something like this. You mentioned this move. We talked about this idea as well, but they play this bishop move. And we enter the Meran variation with this b5 line where we kick out the bishop. And white is a bit too passive here. Remember we talked before about we had to play bishop b7. a6 is a bit too passive because white strikes with e4 in the center. Even though we play it now, e5 is still on the board. And remember that this trade was only good back then in that previous variation because we could capture that. We could capture the knight with our bishop, but this is in the way, right? This pawn is in the way, so that once this happens, this trade happens. Look at that bishop. It's so bad, right? It's like trying to stare at a brick wall, pretty much. The bishop staring at a brick wall. It can't participate in the game. You're gonna try and have to reroute the bishop somewhere else, and that takes time, and that's time that white can mobilize all their pieces, get their pieces onto the queen side, and win the game. And you'll see this is exactly what happens in this game, pretty much. White plays this really interesting move, g5. Instead of, developing their queen to c2 or castling or getting their bishop out or something, they go for the attack. They go immediately for the attack. I just want to open up the discussion to the room. Why might they have played that? Like, what's the rationale behind that move? What do you think?
You're trying to induce h6 maybe.
Okay. Inducing.
Not open dark square diagonal now onto that h6 square.
Yeah. Okay, so inducing the move h6. So, any other ideas?
Yeah, target the m7 square with queen h5.
Okay.
And exactly, like h6 can get directly go queen h5 and you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And this move f6 is really difficult to play because, exactly, right. So instead of all of that, they throw in this check. You can be a fan of that move, you might not be a fan of that move. It's entirely personal preference, but they played it anyway. And the reason why it's personal preference is because a lot of people say that just throwing in a check just for fun is not really a good idea. But if you think it's fine, then just play it. I don't really care. It's your chess game. It's up to you. And the white moves their king. They don't want to block with the bishop or something. They're just like, nah, go for it. It doesn't really do anything, right? It just becomes a weakness, right? It helps white with their development, pretty much. I mentioned before, like, this is coming, but yeah, fair enough. Black now responds by trying to kick this knight out of the way with the move h6, but then they play this really nice move, queen h5. Why? What's the idea of that?
Attacks the f7 square.
Yep.
And of course you can't retake the knight anymore, otherwise you just capture the rook because that pawn is now pinned.
Exactly. So this square is being attacked twice, once and twice, and like you said, can't capture that, otherwise you lose the rook, and it's completely lost for black. So how do you stop it? They try to play the move queen e7, defending the pawn, but it doesn't, because look at that, knight f7, and then you can't take that because this pin, you lose your queen, so it's not good. So instead, black castles, trying to get more pressure on over here, try to make sure that they can capture the knight, but white plays this really nice move. Why is it really nice? And this is the end of the game, by the way. Black resigns. Why is that? Why is that a good move? What does it do? I mean, like, why is queen here a good move?
To go queen h7, bishop g6, mate.
Yes.
And if you take with the rook, you block the king to the rook f7.
Yeah, pretty much. So let's say if we capture this, this is checkmate. So you shouldn't capture the knight. let's say if you play something like, I don't know, queen here, that's mate. So it's pretty much, I think it's unstoppable, mate, if you turn on the analysis.
What about like move the F rook somewhere with that line?
Yeah.
I mean, completely lost, of course, but like you can live for a bit longer.
That's mate in 2, so bishop g6, and that's mate. And then, so the main engine line is to play rook e8 and just be completely lost, pretty much. Right? Or rook fc8 even. And it's just completely lost. So the reason why it's so lost is all because of this situation over here. Right? White was really good because they sensed that this move over here, so a6, was too passive, right? They had to play something like bishop b7 and immediately go for this, right? But because this was too passive, they played e4. This is too late now because they can play e5. And this trade in the center means that this bishop is completely locked out of the position. So that's a masterclass of what not to do in the Semi-Slav. I have another game for you guys, which is Levon Aronian versus Viswanathan Anand. This is one of my favorite games of the Semi-Slav because it's absolutely crazy. I think you said that it was 2013, so I'm assuming you're familiar with the game, but it is so nice. So it starts with the move d4, d5. We're looking at it from Viswanathan Anand's perspective. So he's playing as black, and Levon Aronian is playing as white. c4 and c6. So we enter the Slav defense. They play the Semi-Slav, right? They get into the main position of the Semi-Slav. They create this pyramid position, the triangle, whatever it is, and they play this line e3, which is what we talked about today as well. I mentioned before, like, there's other lines of bishop here, bishop there, but they're all completely different. So that's for you to look at in your own free time, pretty much. And we get pretty similar moves until we get to here. So again, this is still completely theory. This is all theory, but it's still played. Vishy captures, Levon captures, and we play this move, b5, entering the Meran variation. And instead of playing this or this, Levon moves the bishop to the center, trying to get the queen here, trying to castle, and trying to go for this as well. But Vishy, the brilliant mind that he is, he plays bishop d6. This is also completely fine as well. Remember that we were trying to get this queen here as well. We're trying to get the rooks here, and play for something like this. And Levon, he castles. Vishy castles as well. He goes for this battery, like I mentioned before. Vishy goes for the important bishop b7 move, as we mentioned as well. He goes for the same plan that I was talking to you guys before about, of a3 b4, trying to stop Vishy from playing this move. But he prepares it, right? He prepares it with this move. Rook c8. If you play b4 now, I don't think it's a good idea, because actually it could be okay, to be honest. But the whole idea of bringing the rook here is because the queen is on the same file as well. So you might as well bring the rook to that center.
b4, there might be a5.
Could be, yeah. with ideas of capturing this way, maybe. Just trying to destabilize this overextension, pretty much. Trying to say that it's an overextension. And yeah, good work. But that didn't happen in the game. Levon went for this knight move that we saw earlier, but it's in a kind of different position. But it's still the same premise, right? He's trying to go for this attack with the knights and the bishop and the queen. But Vishy, he plays c5, and Levon captures the pawn thinking it's free, but it's never a free pawn with Vishy. It's never a free pawn. The rook's attacked by the knight. You'd think he'd go here. No, of course he's not. He's gonna play knight g4. He's so good. And the reason why you can't take this is probably because there's some lines with this. So just going slow-mo. Instead of capturing this way, you capture this pawn. You can't capture the bishop because it's defended by the knight, and you have this entire trio of pieces swarming the enemy king. So obviously Levon saw that and didn't take the rook. He played pawn f4, trying to stop the bishop from seeing this pawn, and he captures this way, trying to open up the rook, and plays this crazy move. I don't understand how he does this, but it's so crazy. And the reason why is because of this capture. So if you capture this way, this is attacked, and in many cases the queen is coming to the center with a check. And getting this queen mobilized in the center is almost always good for black, because you have so many attacking chances with it. So again, Levon, he doesn't capture this. He calculates all of this, so he doesn't capture. He moves this knight. He tries to attack the knight. He moves the bishop to attack the knight. And two pieces are hanging, right? So this knight and the bishop are hanging. And he plays the absolutely disgusting move, knight e5. Just kind of defending it, but hanging the knight at the same time twice. Just once, because you can't capture this because of this pin. But it's an absolutely disgusting move that he plays. It's I don't understand how he sees this kind of stuff. But Levon captures the knight over here. Vishy takes with a check. Levon moves the king, and Vishy captures the knight. Vishy captures the bishop with the knight, and you can't capture this anymore because this is coming, and the queen is mobilizing. Even though the pawn is attacking the knight, you can't capture it anymore because this is mate, basically. It is mate, actually, yeah. So Levon tries to move the queen to attack the knight, try to go for this, even though there's a pawn there. I don't know. I'm just waffling at the moment. But basically, this is absolutely incredible, you know? And he tries to stop it, but he plays this, again, disgusting move, hanging the bishop twice. When I say hanging, he's a grandmaster. He's obviously not hanging it, but you can't. Yeah, pretty much. Because you can't. If the bishop captures and the knight captures, you can't. No. Yes. Sorry, and that's mate. So he tries to block this bishop in, so that this isn't a threat anymore. But he captures it anyway because it's defended by the pawn, and he has to sack the queen, and this is just completely losing for white. He converts this completely fine. He's a grandmaster, of course. He's able to win up a queen, and that's checkmate. And there's this really key idea over here that we talked about before. Remember that this bishop had this really nice diagonal and put so much pressure on the enemy king. And the reason he was able to do this was, if you go all the way back, he played this move, bishop b7. He got the rook in, and he expanded with this pawn over here. And remember, this bishop came in so clutch. Remember, this queen was over here or something. And it helped with the attack pretty much. So that's all I wanted to talk to you guys about today, pretty much. Obviously, like, I'm not as good as Vishy. I'm not like Gotham Chess as well, who would be able to analyze this game a lot better than I could. I'm only 1500, so apologies. Like, if there's a lot of stuff that I probably missed, but it's okay. I just wanted to highlight that this bishop becomes so incredible later on in the game, especially over here because of this pin. And this attack over here is just absolutely incredible, right? The way he's able to know all of this, the way he's able to coordinate all of these pieces together. That's the beauty of the Semi-Slav as well, right? If you get it right, you get it right spectacularly, and as Vishy did here. And so on to the final bit of this session. I want you guys to pair up and try play the Semi-Slav Defence for yourself as well. We don't have boards right now, so I'm just gonna like put a board up on the screen as well so that we can play together pretty much. But yeah, other than that, like, I just want to thank you guys for coming. And obviously Fraser's going to do next week's session. He's going to do the LRCA game analysis. But for my session in 2 weeks' time, it's on the 30th. And we're going to talk about endgame essentials pretty much. Intermediate endgames. But yeah, for now, we'll boot up a chess.com and we'll do 2 versus 2 pretty much. We'll do a pair versus pair. If that's okay with you guys, yeah? Yeah? Okay. We'll do it on the chess. Why not?
Can you use the toilet?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Good presentation.
Thank you. I'll turn off the recording as well. Thank you guys for coming.